Mike, last week we saw one of the most impressive single-day moves that I've ever seen in a company, with Meta moving up 20% the day after their earnings release.
At least a company of that size. I mean, what are they at?
This
$2
is why I
billion
say it's so
company?
impressive.
Yeah.
You don't really see companies add $200 billion in market cap in a day. Like, yes, you see all these tiny little whatevers. Oh, hey, we're up, 80% today. Okay, fine. You're a $6 million company.
Sure.
Meta, on the other hand, heading into earnings last week, had a market cap of $996 trillion. And then went to $1.21 trillion. Did I say $994 billion is what they were? Did I say trillion? I don't know. In any case, they added $200 billion in market cap in a day. I don't know offhand. I can only think of maybe a couple other instances where you maybe saw something similar, and they were from, Apple when they added,
Right.
they went from $2.5 to $2.7 trillion, and even that percentage-wise is much smaller, obviously. So it was just one of the most impressive single days that I've ever seen for an individual stock. It now has Meta, when we look at some of its valuation metrics, trading 31 times earnings, 23 times forward earnings, 9 times sales, and, the question is, okay, where do they go from here? It's a hugely profitable company. The margins are, 35% operating margins. You've got free cash flow last year of $44 billion. Profit last year was $39 billion. Revenue was $134. I mean, this is not a company that's going out of business, even though they're trying to spend their way to that through, continuing to lose money on the metaverse. But they just make too much money to lose money. I know that sounds very Yogi Berra-ish, but
They can afford to waste a bunch of money on the
they
metaverse.
can. Like, Mark Zuckerberg can light his money on fire, and it's fine because they have more than they know what to do with. But the question on this does become, and we've seen this with a lot of companies when their valuations get a little nutty over time, hey, are you going to be able to grow into that? And people will point to Amazon and say, well, Amazon was, 100x, sales for, 2 decades. And I'm like, okay, but they're the exception that proves the rule.
Yep.
Microsoft got up to those levels back in the tech bubble, and it took them 15 years and 2 CEOs to recover. Tesla, for the last 3 years, has basically traded at the same price, even though it's, kind of round-tripped and everything, but it hasn't seen any share price appreciation overall in that 3-year period now. When you look at the history of companies that get valued very steeply, there are far more where it's not like they go out of business, but they just kind of stagnate for a while because, the underlying stuff has to catch up to the price. And the question on Facebook or on Meta or whatever we want to call it these days is, which one are you?
Yeah. We had the same kind of question about Apple, right? It's like, when Apple comes out with their earnings, I know it's very different stuff here, but our question was, what's going to be that next big thing, Apple? Like, what are you going to roll out? What new piece of hardware are you going to roll out that's going to be the next profit driver? And the question's slightly different from Facebook because they don't really have – they created Facebook, and that's it. Everything else that they have had success in, they've bought.
Right.
And so
they bought Instagram. They bought WhatsApp.
Kind of that's my question is, what can you buy like, you have a good track record of this.
They do have a great track record of acquisitions.
If I'm Meta, it's more about, okay, how can I more deeply build this moat? Does TikTok get banned in parts of the United States, for instance, giving you a little bit more of a moat on your social media application? What can you do to go acquire a competitor? Can you go and buy Twitter if it gets really, really bad out there and do the turnaround that Elon Musk couldn't?
I don't think they want to buy Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, clearly not, didn't they?
They launched Threads.
They launched Threads, yeah. So I don't think they want to either, but that would be my question for Meta is it's not about, what new product can you roll out unless it's some new innovation that I'm just not abundantly familiar with on the advertising side of things. How can you continue to just leverage that? But yeah, what acquisition can you make that is going to be the next big hit in the social media space? Because that's where your strong spot's been.
Who would you buy if you were them?
Honestly, no idea because I'm just not that deep into the social media space.
I don't think that the next thing they would buy would necessarily be social media, because I just don't know that the world needs another social network. I think we're fine there. I mean, we're not like
It's probably something in the AI space. I mean, that's not what I would do, but if there's going to be an acquisition, I would think it's somewhere in the AI space.
It feels to me that Meta recognizes, rightly so, that they need to own the hardware for whatever the next generation thing is, so that they don't get Appled like they did a few years ago when Apple changed all of the privacy rules on the devices on them.
Yeah.
So the question is, what do you want to own there? And I think ultimately, and when we talk about AI, like this is kind of where I think I would go if I were them, and this is really kind of off the grid, I think. I'd buy a chip maker. I wouldn't run it myself. I'd basically operate it at arm's length. But I'd buy it. I'd go out and I'd be like, "Hey, AMD, I see you there trying to get, a bigger foothold in AI. Here, we got some deep pockets here. Sure, AMD's got,
That's the problem, is that's the only thing you have if you're Meta in the chip space.
Well,
the only thing you have is the deep pockets to fund the next thing.
But this is exactly what AMD needs. AMD is a company right now that their free cash flow is $1 billion a year. They got $22 billion in revenue, and they made $854 million in profit.
Yeah.
Meta can come in and say, hey, the $20 billion a year that we're throwing at the metaverse?
We'd rather throw it at you.
We're going to give you $10 billion a year to go and build really cool chips. Just go do it, and we'll figure out how to integrate them into our stuff later on. If I were Mark Zuckerberg, and most days I wake up and that's not who I want to be, but like at least one day a year I'm like, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to be the Zuck.
Yeah, I want a few hundred acres on a Hawaiian island. And
is that where he's doing? Have you seen the thing about he's trying to raise like the cows? I think it is.
Yeah, I think it's on Kauai. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, imagine just being able, because his goal is basically to make better than Wagyu beef, I believe.
Right. Yep.
Imagine having
the next investment for
Imagine
Facebook.
having the resources to make
challenge
the
Japanese.
To challenge the Japanese for beef dominance.
Yeah. In Hawaii. Just doesn't seem logical to me, but good riddance, sir.
If he wanted to really go after him, he should call it I'm trying to think of the right way to go at name-wise. It's no, not Wagyu, Wag-who. We don't even pay attention to you.
Zuck Chuck. It's just going to be Chuck roast.
I don't think that's the best cut.
Yeah, well.
And I say this as someone who's affectionately named after that cut of meat.
Yeah.
And, well, if the shoe
That's
fits.
how they came up with it, huh?
Yes, they named it after me.
Yeah.
It's my favorite
I thought
cut.
it was your parents the other way around. Yeah,
well, a lot of people think that, but it's a common
other way.
misconception.
Got it.